On a freezing Christmas night, while families unwrapped presents by glowing fires, a single dad walked home exhausted, only to freeze in his tracks at a sight that would change everything. A little girl, no older than 8, was digging through a trash can with trembling hands, her thin coat ripped, her face pale with hunger. But when he brought her inside for warmth, he discovered a silver bracelet clutched in her fist, an object tied to a secret so dark it would drag him into a courtroom battle against a millionaire and force him to choose between silence, justice, and the very soul of his family. The night was bitterly cold, the kind of Christmas Eve where every window in town glowed with warmth and laughter. Yet Michael's breath turned white in the dark as he trudged along the empty sidewalk. He shifted the strap of his worn leather bag across his shoulder, its weight digging into his tired muscles. His boots crunched against the frost, each step echoing the fatigue of a man who had worked one shift too many. Behind the closed curtains of houses lining the street, families sang carols, exchanged gifts, and clinked glasses by fireplaces. Michael felt the ache of absence, a hollow reminder that his own small home lacked the glow of abundance. His daughter Lily was waiting for him, probably asleep by now, and though he had managed to buy a second-hand doll wrapped in old newspaper, guilt pressed against his chest. He wanted to give her more, but tonight, he had nothing left to give except his presence. As he turned a corner, a sound cut through the silent night, a faint rustling, the metallic clatter of a trash can lid. Michael stopped. At the edge of the dim light cast by a flickering street lamp, he saw her, a little girl, no older than 8, hunched over a trash bin, her small fingers digging desperately through discarded bags. Her coat was too thin for the biting winter air, her shoes mismatched, and strands of tangled hair fell across her pale face. She looked like a shadow against the snow. Michael's heart clenched. Memories crashed back. He was no stranger to hunger, nor to the shame of searching for scraps in places meant for refuse. For an instant, he saw his younger self mirrored in the frail figure before him. "Hey," he said softly, careful not to frighten her. His voice was low, steady, touched with both authority and compassion. The girl froze, her shoulders stiffening. She clutched something close to her chest, a crust of bread she had just pulled from a torn paper bowl, and her wide eyes reflected fear. She was like a wild bird ready to flee. Michael slowly raised his hands, palms open. "It's okay," he continued, stepping closer under the halo of the street lamp. "I won't hurt you. Are you alone out here?" The girl shook her head quickly, then nodded, as though unsure of the truth. Her lips trembled, not from the cold alone. Michael noticed faint bruises at the edge of her sleeve, half hidden but undeniable. His throat tightened. He knelt down to her level, ignoring the sting of frost biting into his knees. "My name is Michael," he whispered. "I have a daughter about your age. Would you like something warm to eat?" The girl hesitated, her breath forming fragile clouds in the air. For a long, quiet moment, it seemed she might dart away into the night. Then, her eyes fell on the plastic bag in Michael's hand, the one holding Lily's simple Christmas dinner leftovers. Hunger won over fear. She gave the faintest nod. Michael stood and extended his hand. She slipped hers into his, cold as ice and trembling. He noticed then that she was clutching a small object in her other fist, half hidden by her sleeve. When they reached his modest home, Lily was still awake, sitting by the small tree they had decorated with paper stars and strings of popcorn. Her eyes widened when she saw the stranger, but Michael quickly explained. "This is Emma," he said gently, having coaxed her name out during the quiet walk. "She's going to join us tonight." Lily, full of innocence, immediately offered Emma the seat closest to the heater. Soon the room filled with the scent of reheated soup and bread, a humble feast. Yet Emma's eyes shone as though it were a banquet. As she ate, Michael observed more details. The way Emma flinched at sudden noises, the way her gaze lingered on the fire as though memorizing its comfort, and the way she guarded that object still clutched in her palm. When at last she set it on the table, Michael's breath caught. It was a silver bracelet, scratched and worn, engraved with a name he could barely make out in the dim light. Anna. The piece looked out of place in her ragged belongings, too fine to have been scavenged. A symbol, perhaps, of a past she could not yet explain. Michael felt a chill, not from the winter air, but from the weight of the unknown. Who was this child, really? Why was she on the street alone, clutching a bracelet that hinted at a life far removed from the one she appeared to be living? And why, when he looked into her tired eyes, did he feel as though fate had placed her in his path for a reason that would soon unravel his world? The morning light filtered weakly through thin curtains, painting pale streaks across the small living room. Michael stirred awake in his armchair, where he had dozed off after ensuring Emma had fallen asleep on the couch with a blanket tucked around her. The faint sound of Lily's laughter drifted from the kitchen, where she was proudly showing Emma how to mix flour and sugar for simple Christmas cookies. The sweet scent of vanilla and the warmth of the oven filled the space, masking the bitterness of Michael's worries. Yet beneath the fragile peace, a current of unease flowed steadily. Emma smiled shyly at Lily, but her movements revealed caution, like someone who expected punishment for the smallest mistake. Every flinch, every darting glance toward the door told a story Michael couldn't ignore. He couldn't forget the bracelet. It now rested on the table, its silver dulled but unmistakably engraved with the name Anna. Michael had asked gently about it the night before, but Emma only lowered her head and whispered, "It was hers," without saying who her was. That single fragment of truth gnawed at him. He needed answers. Later that day, he slipped the bracelet into his pocket and drove to see Sarah, an old college friend turned attorney. Sarah greeted him in her tidy office, her expression softening when he laid the bracelet on her desk. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her tone immediately sharpened with curiosity. Michael explained the night's events, every detail. Emma's hunger, the bruises, her silence, the fear behind her eyes. Sarah turned the bracelet over in her hands, her brow furrowed. "Michael," she said at last, "this isn't just any bracelet. It matches the description of an item linked to a child abduction case from 6 years ago. A little girl named Emma disappeared from a wealthy family in the city. The mother's name was Anna. This," she tapped the bracelet gently, "was hers." The words struck like a hammer. Michael felt the air leave his lungs. He tried to reconcile the frightened girl in his kitchen with the shadow of a missing child case that had made headlines years ago. "So what happens now?" he asked, his voice tight. Sarah hesitated. "If we notify the authorities, Emma will be taken into state custody until her identity is confirmed. But Michael, if she's been abused, sending her back could mean sending her to more harm. And if you keep her here without reporting," she trailed off, her eyes locking with his, "you could face charges yourself." The dilemma wrapped around Michael like chains. The image of Lily flashed in his mind, her innocent joy, her belief in her father's goodness. What would she think if the police came to take him away? Yet when he remembered Emma's trembling hands clutching bread from the trash, his heart rebelled at the thought of abandoning her to a system that might fail her. That evening, Michael returned home with the weight of Sarah's words pressing hard. He found Emma sitting by the small Christmas tree, her eyes fixed on the flickering lights. She looked almost peaceful, but when Lily dropped a mixing spoon and it clattered against the counter, Emma jerked violently, covering her head as though bracing for a blow. Michael's heart ached. He knelt beside her, speaking gently. "No one's going to hurt you here." She nodded faintly, though her eyes told him trust was still a fragile thing. Over the next few days, small pieces of Emma's past slipped out through guarded whispers. She spoke of loud voices, locked doors, and nights when she had to find food on her own. She never mentioned parents, only them, always with a shiver. Michael didn't push. He listened, storing each fragment like evidence in a trial. He began documenting everything. her bruises, her fears, the bracelet. Because he knew the day was coming when the truth would demand more than silence. But then, one night as Michael stepped onto his porch for air, he felt it, the prickling awareness of being watched. Across the street, a man stood partially hidden by shadows, a cigarette glowing faintly in his hand. His eyes never left Michael's house. Michael froze, instincts sharp. The man's stance was deliberate, predatory. And when their gazes locked, the stranger simply turned and walked away. Michael's pulse hammered. Whoever Emma was, her past was not just a tragic mystery. It was a danger that had already found its way to his doorstep. The courtroom was silent, except for the ticking of the clock on the wall and the faint shuffle of papers. Michael sat at the front, his hands clasped tightly together. Every muscle in his body wound with tension. Across the room, Emma sat beside Sarah, her small frame dwarfed by the wooden chair, her eyes fixed on the floor. Lily held her hand, whispering encouragements in her ear, refusing to let her feel alone. Michael's gaze shifted to the opposite side of the room, where a man in a sharp suit, flanked by high-profile attorneys, watched with cold intensity. This was Robert Hayes, a wealthy businessman, and, as the DNA tests confirmed, Emma's biological father. The revelation had shaken the entire town. The missing child from years ago was not only alive but had been hiding in plain sight on a Christmas night, digging through trash until Michael intervened. When the judge called the hearing to order, the clash of two worlds began. Robert's attorneys painted him as a grieving father, desperate to reclaim his lost daughter. They spoke of resources, education, a life of luxury Emma deserved. But Sarah rose with quiet fire in her voice, presenting photographs of Emma's bruises, testimony from neighbors who recalled hearing screams from the Hayes estate, and Michael's meticulous notes documenting her trauma. Each piece of evidence told a story money could not erase. Michael sat still, but his heart was a battlefield. He remembered the nights holding Emma as she cried from nightmares, the way she had flinched at loud voices, the way she had clung to Lily's hand during storms. He had not been her father in blood, but in every action since that Christmas night, he had been her protector, her anchor. His thoughts echoed, "If I lose her now, she'll fall back into the darkness she escaped." Then came the twist no one expected. The man who had watched Michael's home from the shadows weeks before, Detective Harris, a private investigator hired by the Hayes family, took the stand. His testimony turned the room. "I was hired to locate the missing child," he admitted, his voice steady. "But what I saw in that small house was not a kidnapping. It was a man, a daughter, and a frightened little girl finally being treated with kindness. If Emma is returned to her biological family, she will not be safe. I can no longer, in good conscience, recommend that." The courtroom stirred, gasps echoing as Harris's words dismantled the Hayes family's facade. Emma was asked to speak. Her small voice wavered, but she lifted her chin with courage far beyond her years. "I don't want to go back," she whispered. "Please don't make me. I feel safe with Michael. He listens. He makes soup when I can't sleep. And Lily, she's my sister now." Tears shimmered in her eyes as the room held its breath. Michael fought his own tears, his heart splitting open with pride and pain at the same time. The judge studied the evidence, the testimonies, the trembling child before him. His gavel struck the desk. "The court grants guardianship of Emma to Michael Thompson." The words crashed over Michael like a wave, flooding him with relief so strong it left him dizzy. He reached for Emma, who ran into his arms, her bracelet glinting under the courtroom lights. For the first time, he believed it was not a shackle to her past, but a key to her freedom. Weeks later, the house smelled of fresh pine as the family decorated a new Christmas tree together. Lily giggled as she placed a handmade star at the top, while Emma carefully hung paper snowflakes she had cut herself. Outside, snowflakes drifted down in silence, covering the world in a soft white blanket. Michael stepped onto the porch, breathing in the cold night air. At the edge of the walkway, A single white flower had pushed through the frost, fragile yet defiant, blooming where no one expected it. He bent down, touched its delicate petals and smiled. Inside, the laughter of two little girls spilled into the night. Michael returned, his heart lighter than it had been in years. The pain of loss was still there, etched into his soul. But now it stood beside something stronger. Hope. His family was no longer broken. It was transformed. And as Emma nestled beside Lily, whispering about dreams of baking cookies and building snowmen, Michael knew this was the true miracle of Christmas. It wasn't about gifts or wealth. It was about love born from pain, justice forged in truth, and healing that bloomed even in the harshest winters. And so, what began with a single dad stumbling upon a hungry little girl in the trash on Christmas night became something far greater. A story of courage, justice, and the healing power of love. Michael's choice to act with kindness when it mattered most didn't just change Emma's life. It rebuilt a family, proved that compassion is stronger than fear, and reminded us all that hope can bloom even in the coldest winter. If this story touched your heart, consider sharing it so others can feel its message too. And if you'd like to see more stories of love, justice, and second chances, don't forget to subscribe and support with a super thanks. It helps us bring more soul-stirring tales to life.